All right. We're live. Max, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Yes, great. Thank you, John, for this invitation. I'm very pleased to be with you. That's always interesting discussion.
So, we spoke last, I believe it was April, March or April of this year. And obviously a lot has happened since then. I guess the first question is just how has the year been for you? You know, how have you been doing in your work life and managing all the change in pace and all the different rules and restrictions that have been placed on people this year?
Yeah, what it was disappointing for me personally. I was supposed starting in March to do a tour across the country and meet our people and doing rally and rebuild the party. So I was not able to do that. That was disappointing. But I use like everybody Zoom teleconference and try to stay in touch with our people. So I hope I'll be able in 2021 to be back on the road. That's important. I don't believe personally that we will have an election this spring. I think the Trudeau government will be able to have the support of the Bloc Québécois or the NDP with their budget. But that being said, we need to be ready as a party. And I was working to continue to build the party, and we did a big changes at the party with amalgamation of riding associations. That was a very, very good work that we had to do because I don't know if you knew it, but at the last election, we had 338 riding associations all across the country. So one riding association in every riding. But that was not efficient. And so we'll do I'll give you an example. Like in Montreal, there's about 25 ridings on the island of Montreal. So we'll have only one regional riding association that will be in charge of all the island and will be more efficient like that. So we are doing that amalgamation of riding association, and so that's going well. And after that, the big task for us will be to choose our candidates. We'll start that in January for the next election. So we are busy to work on that. And also, I'm following the news with the COVID-19, and I think we it's very dangerous. We are going to a kind of a socialism in this country with Trudeau, and not only here in Canada, but also in other countries. A government that try to impose their point of view and their vision, and I'm looking at that, and we believe in individual freedom and personal responsibility. And right now, you don't have that from our leaders, the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, the Liberals, the Conservatives. They all think that they know better than us what to do with that crisis. But I hope 2021 will be better. I'm pretty optimistic for that, and we'll see what will happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when we spoke last, all of this had just started, and I listened to our previous interview last night, and I remember we were talking about government response and fiscal response and budget and deficit and all of this stuff. And I remember you saying, like it looks like this year we might have a massive $100 billion deficit in Canada. And look where we are now. I mean, it's probably going to come in around $400 billion deficit. And next year, maybe marginally better. But, even you and I, who I think we we expected a lot of overreach and reactionary responses to this stuff. I think even you and I, over the course of the past year, have been surprised. And as much as I lament the fiscal irresponsibility of the government, that is something that an individual to a certain degree can manage or insulate themselves from if they're savvy enough, if they know how to, manage, financial, their finances, for example. But the thing that's most disheartening to me, and I want to come back to that point about the finances, because I think we have a lot of big problems on the horizon in that domain. But one of the big the things that concerns me the most is rights, a respect, an appreciation, a dedication to upholding individual rights and freedoms this year seems to have gone by the wayside in favor of fear, emotion, and some idea of the common or collective good. And I disagree with that premise entirely. But even if we were going to have that discussion, all of this data and information and fear mongering about the virus has been so narrow in scope. We don't seem to be discussing all of the data and trying to come, having a discussion about what is the best response with all of the data when we take case counts, when we take deaths, when we take recoveries, when we take comorbidities, when we take how methods of recording. None of that seems to be a part of the narrative. It's just, let's look at cases and let's try to stop more cases from happening. And as a result of that, we've seen a complete, you know, uh, disregard for individual rights and freedoms. And that's been the most frightening thing about all this to me. I'm wondering what your perspective on that is.
Well, I agree with you, John, and disregard also for other point of view. There's other experts, doctors that are saying, we don't need to have lockdowns. We need to protect older people. We know that they're most affected by that virus. So, and now there's a small, medium-sized entrepreneurs and businesses that cannot operate. It's they don't want to have any. I'm thinking about restaurants and bars and gyms. They don't want to have subsidies from the government for not being open. They just want to work. They just want to open their doors to their clients. And it's now we have a second wave and more lockdowns. And I was also very disappointed with the position in Alberta. Jason Kenney in the beginning were the only one who didn't impose masks and lockdowns, and now he's doing that. There's other solutions, and I'm not an expert, but I'm reading and I'm listening, and there's other solutions out there. But you cannot have that discussion in the mainstream media. If you have that discussion, they will look at you like somebody that is a little bit crazy. They don't open their pages for other opinions. Then the only one idea that is coming from our government. So it's scary a little bit. And we need to be in a democracy. And in a democracy, you need to have debates and you need to be able to have debates. And now here in Quebec, Legault just said yesterday that, you can have up to $6,000 as if you have people in your house during Christmas time. Your house must be your property, and usually police don't have the right to come in your house if they don't have any mandate from the court. But that being said, they are saying in Quebec that they will be very active and they will look and they want people to respect all these regulations and restrictions on our freedom and liberty. It's scary. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, we need to be out there and to fight and for what we believe. And I think more and more people will understand. The good news is the last couple of months, we had more people following the PPC, following my YouTube channel, following me on Twitter. I'm on Parler right now. I'm starting to be on Parler. So there's more and more people that I can reach, and that's a good news. So I think out there's a silent majority that, they're looking at that and they're saying, it's not normal what happened right now, and we don't want to have that new normal. We just want to live our life and be responsible of our health and our actions.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, it's something I talk about a lot on this show, but it really is evident in this type of environment that very few people seem to have an appreciation for history and what happens when you disregard individual rights and freedoms in service of whatever the common good or collective good issue may be. Things can get really, really ugly if you allow that to unfold. And that's part of the thing that concerns me is that just, fear has allowed us as a society to do away with the absolutes that are supposed to be the bedrock of our society, which is individual freedom and liberty. And if we don't have that, if that can be swept away because of fill in the blank event or fear or whatever, then that conveys a tremendous amount of power and control over the people who are who are in control of those laws and the apparatus of the state and things of that nature. So, that's the thing that gives me, the most trepidation. And then here we have the most perhaps relevant issue right now is the vaccine is being disseminated around the world right now. Obviously, it was developed extremely quickly. It's a very unique vaccine in terms of the type of vaccine that it is. So when I say that, I mean to say that there's not very much data on, long-term effects and efficacy and safety of such a vaccine. And yet it seems like there's going to be a lot of coercion, if not mandates, for people to receive this vaccine. I'm just wondering, what your take is on that issue.
Absolutely. The most important for us is freedom of choice. People must be able to decide by themselves if they want the vaccine or not. And for me personally, I don't want to take that vaccine. I'm not at risk. I'm in shape, and I can understand that older people will take the vaccine and maybe other person. But I don't see, and I don't want the government to tell me that I cannot travel or I cannot go to a restaurant or to see a movie if I don't have the vaccine. That's like a communist party. They're doing that in China. So we're not in China, we're not in a communist country. So we will fight against that. And I think, I hope we'll have the support of a lot of people. Yes, people can do what they want to do with their body. If they want to have the vaccine, it's okay. And maybe the vaccine is very good. I'm not an expert, but because I know that personally, I'm not at risk and I'm in shape. So, I'm not against vaccines. I'm just saying, I don't want to have that vaccine, and I don't want the population to be in a position to take the vaccine because they want to live their life, they want to travel, because they want to be out there, and that's scary. You can count on us at the PPC to fight against that.
Yeah, yeah, and the troubling part about that is that this whole narrative has been pushed down a direction so focused on, cases and flattening the curve and all the lockdowns that people are forced to endure as a result of the imposed response by the government to this virus, that it's very, very easy to see how the people that take the stance that you just took, the people that say, I want this to be my choice, it's very easy to see how they will be demonized by the media, by the government, and there'll be a lot of pressure put on those people probably, and they'll be seen as dangerous to society or selfish or whatever. When nothing could be further from the truth. It's people looking at this thing rationally and saying, myself as a young, healthy individual, this virus places effectively no threat to my health and safety, no more than any other activity I may do, including getting in the car and driving to work on a daily basis. So why should I have to do that? And that's going to be, I hope, a public debate. But as you said earlier, many of these things don't even make it to the public discourse because, the narrative is so strong in the fear and the response to this issue thus far that, maybe it's not permitted, as you said.
Yeah, but I think, if that happened, people will lose some of their freedom. But the most important, when we are saying, individual freedom and personal responsibility, it's important. But if you want to benefit from your freedom, you need to be able to have money first and to be able to keep the money that you earn. And right now, what will happen with the huge deficit and the debts, so people will be taxed, and the tax will go up, or will have inflation. So the governments don't have the courage to tax people right now for all these huge deficit. What they're doing, they won't tax, but what they will do, they will maybe increase the taxes a little bit on the 1% and things like that. But to be able to balance the budget, they won't do that. So what they will do, they will print money and will have inflation, and inflation is a hidden tax. So we will lose some of our freedom, because we will have less money in our pockets, and the money that we'll have will buy fewer goods and services. So that's a kind of a way to a loss of freedom, and people don't realize that also.
Yeah, that's a very, very underappreciated fact that a lot of people just, they're not educated enough or haven't taken the time to understand that dynamic well enough to know how insidious and how damaging it can be to their lifestyle and their freedom, et cetera. And it brings a broader point that as greater state and government involvement in the economy and in society, as it grows, you get greater economic dislocation, you get greater economic impairment, which necessitates, at least, you know, in a public perspective, more government involvement. And it's this cycle all the way down. But as that happens, people are becoming more dependent and more dependent on the state. You know, now we have the CERB and ideas about UBI and things like this, which, among other things, makes it more difficult to be critical of that apparatus. And that, you know, again, that's one of the concerning things, is that not only are these things happening, but they're the ease with which they're able to happen because people are so dependent on the state is increasing. You know, and again, with the historical context, these sorts of scenarios don't typically end well if you continue on this course, but so few people have an appreciation for that.
But that's why I'm saying, you know, the second wave that we are seeing right now, it's a second wave of socialism in this country, and it's bad. The government and the liberals and also the conservatives thinks that, you know, if they spend money that they don't have, they will stimulate the economy. And we know that it is a sedative for the economy. It's not a stimulus. You know, the government cannot create wealth. It's people, it's entrepreneurs that are investing, who are creating wealth and jobs in this country. So they will spend another $100 million try to stimulate the economy. That's not working. We have proof in the past in other countries. So, and they must do the opposite. But because, you know, the population don't realize right now what's happening and what will be the cost in the future, they don't have a lot of people against all these stimulus and money that they are throwing to everybody. You know, it's the first recession that the personal income of a family is increasing instead of going down. Usually in a recession, you know, you lose your job, you have fewer incomes and less money. But right now, the government is so generous that we are in a recession and the personal income is increasing. But, you know, that's we can have a Christmas every day, every day of the year. That will have to stop, and at the end, you know, our purchasing power will go down, our standard of living will go down, and it's too bad.
Yeah, you know, these sort of actions don't even stand up to just basic logic and rationale. Like if we just had $100 billion lying around to, you know, jumpstart the economy or boost the economy, well, why didn't we just do that last year and the year before and the year before? If it was as easy as just taking the 100 billion and going, hey, we'll fix everything with this. Why don't we do that every year? Why don't we give everyone $1 million check? You know,
Yeah.
and people will think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that, but it's kind of binary. Like, can the government create value out of thin air, and does that value actually accrue in real terms to the economy? Yes or no? My contention is no. It's a
Yeah.
redistributive effect, and there's only so long that parasite can suck the lifeblood of the economy that it's on, and all that dislocation and all that malinvestment ultimately comes home to roost. But as you said, you know, most people will experience that primarily in the cost of living going up, first slowly and then probably more rapidly. And then by the time they realize that something is wrong, it's a little bit late to fix it.
Yeah. But I know that you want to protect your wealth, and you're very in the Bitcoin. And you know, I want John to thank you, because last time we had an interview like that, a discussion like that. You know, I told you that, you know, I'm very curious about Bitcoin, and I don't know a lot, but I'm curious. And you sent me that book that it's very useful for me. I didn't finish to read it. The Bitcoin standard. And I want to say to everybody that are listening to us and viewing our interview right now, if you want to know more about Bitcoin, you're right, John. That's a very great book. And you know, I'm not there to give some financial advice to people, but I think it's time to protect your wealth, and Bitcoin or gold can be a way to do that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that that you're enjoying it so far, and I look forward to hearing some thoughts, maybe privately, once you've finished it. Because that book in particular, it's interesting, and I think the reason why it struck a chord with the mainstream audience is because most of it is about money, not about Bitcoin,
Yeah.
and that's a history that a lot of people don't have. But once they have an appreciation for what money is and how it's evolved and how it works and what good money is and what bad money is, then at the end of it, it just says, this is what Bitcoin is and this is where it fits in the landscape. But a lot of people don't even ever question the money. They say, I have a $5 Canadian and it's this Canadian dollar bill, and that's all I've ever known. And what's the difference between this and an American dollar bill and some gold? And once you begin to understand the differences, then you begin to see just how not only damaging, but how unfair it is that a government has a monopoly on the creation of money, and what that means in terms of what they're allowed and able to siphon off the productive capacity of an economy and the power that that conveys to them. And that's a big part of in the Bitcoin community, why we want to separate money and state is because it leads to an extreme imbalance of power, an extreme irresponsibility at the hands of the people who have the control to create that money at zero cost, a non-market based money. And that leads to wars, longer wars, greater size government, more ability to oppress and limit freedoms of the citizenry, and a lot of other, deleterious impacts. And so that's why we're so passionate about this thing.
Yeah, I understand. And that must be a good investment because now governments around the world are looking to regulate Bitcoin and to impose more restrictions. So they don't like competition,
Mm.
and we know that central banks are looking for another way to compete against Bitcoins. And so that must be a good way to protect your wealth also. It's too bad that there's something there that people can use to protect their wealth, and now you have the government that try to interfere. What do you think about that? You're more an expert than me about that, but I've read that maybe it can happen, more regulation. And what do you think will be the impact of these regulations coming from central banks and maybe the UN or organization like that want to impose more regulation to restrict the use of the bitcoins? Do you think they will be successful, or what is your point of view on that? I'm curious to know it.
I think this has been this has always been a scenario that people in the Bitcoin space have expected. So there's a very adversarial sort of mindset from people that are in Bitcoin. We're under no illusions. We don't think we're just going to come along and disrupt the state monopoly on money and there's not going to be any pushback. So from
Yeah.
day one, that's been a very core mindset of people in this space. And it's happened in different places in different times. I was living in China when China had a partial ban. So the exchanges were banned, in like the fiat to Bitcoin exchanges were banned in China. And the thing is the reason why Bitcoin one of the reasons why Bitcoin is so special, I mean, none of Bitcoin's other interesting attributes, like let's say its absolute scarcity, it's 21 million supply cap, none of that really matters or can even be maintained unless Bitcoin has censorship resistance. So that's pretty much the whole thesis of Bitcoin, is that it's a censorship resistant money that that governments nor private institutions nor people can shut down. Now, can they make it more difficult for citizens of certain countries to operate or with it? Absolutely. Because if a government says, "Hey, well, first of all, we'll shut down all the exchanges," and that makes it more difficult to acquire and trade, right?
Yeah.
But then they can say, maybe we're going to tax it at a high rate, or we're going to say you're not allowed to own it. And so then you become a de facto criminal if you have it, and that certainly causes inconvenience. But one, I don't. That doesn't kill Bitcoin. That
But
makes it.
they did that to gold also. Roosevelt did that. So you don't have the right to own gold, and at the end, we still gold is still there. So you think it can be the same thing with bitcoins?
Yeah, I think it will. I think, and the thing is like this is probably going to be a pretty substantial battle. I mean, this is the whole game, right? When we talk about the size of government and we talk about tyranny, we talk about individual liberty, the control of the money is pretty much the linchpin for everything. And this is why people in the Bitcoin space have been critical of gold, is because as great as it was as a form of market-based money, is that it naturally, because of its physicality and value to weight ratio, it's centralized. And then it just became a power game. Who had the soldiers, or who had the army, or who had the might to take over the centralized gold? And that's kind of the story of history. What's interesting about Bitcoin is that it has a lot of excellent monetary properties, but it's distributed throughout the entire world and in unknown amounts with unknown people all over the place. So there's no single honeypot that you can come in and take over and control. And so that's part of its censorship resistance. So I think, you know, and also it's an exceptional form of optionality. So with Bitcoin, you can have your entire wealth stored as 12 or 24 words in your head. And if you need to go escape Canada and go to Switzerland, if you need to escape the US and go to South America, if you need to be mobile, and the story of history is rife with examples where the citizenry were oppressed to a certain degree, let's say Germany around prior to the Second World War, and certain people tried to get out before things got really bad, but you had to leave your capital in the country because you couldn't escape with your gold or your real estate or any of that stuff. So you had to start anew in America or Canada or England or wherever. Bitcoin represents the opportunity to take your wealth with you, and that puts a lot of pressure on governments, because it means that they can't, they have to kind of stop you from leaving, because they can't stop you from taking your capital with you. And hey ho, what do you know? We have a crisis on our hands where that's exactly what's happening. Is that it's decreasing the mobility of individuals across borders. Now, I don't know if that was some part of an agenda or if it's just happenstance, part of this thing. But to answer your question, I don't think ultimately, I think Bitcoin wins the war with government, because of its architecture and because of how how important a lot of people realize that it is. But I think it will be, there will be a lot of inconveniences placed on people. So people like myself and other people in the space, we may be incentivized via the regulations that come down the pike to play a sort of jurisdictional arbitrage game. Maybe we have to be somewhere else for a while, or what have you. But the interesting point, Maxime, that is actually something relevant to you that I'd love to discuss with you, is that the flip side of that is there could be, I don't think government regulations will destroy, will do a complete ban on Bitcoin, because I think the regulations up till now and the general communications have been that they realize there's an industry worth fostering here. They just want to have some type of control over it.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening now, and especially over the last year, I mean, in August, we saw a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, MicroStrategy. They put $450 million of their treasury reserves into Bitcoin. Yesterday, there was an announcement by, I think it was Massachusetts life insurance. They have $420 billion assets under management, something like that. And they put 100 million into Bitcoin. So, and then we have senators in the United States that are coming out advocating for Bitcoin. Cynthia Lummis in Wyoming, she was just elected to the Senate, and she's been on all the financial news programs, and that's one of her primary issues. And so I think the narrative that this is about liberty. Bitcoin is about freedom and liberty. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. Simultaneous to that, you can also make a lot of money, because if this really is the next evolutionary step in the evolution of money, then as it monetizes, as it distributes around the world, as people learn about it and begin to put some of their savings into that vehicle to protect it against inflation and government overreach and government confiscation, then necessarily when you have a supply that's limited, the price has to adjust upward for that distribution. So as people often say in this space, you come to get rich, you stay for the revolution. So I think those are two powerful incentives. Freedom and wealth are two very, very powerful incentives that I think are going to mean that Bitcoin innervates the legacy system through companies, individuals, even politicians, et cetera. And that makes it harder to ban when it's so commonplace. When it was just drug dealers and whatever else on the internet, sure, very easy to ban. But when it's become more acceptable, more palatable to a larger audience, I think it's more difficult to ban it outright.
And since our last discussion, I think Bitcoin went a little bit higher, and we don't. I'm reading some financial experts that are more invest more in gold, but now they're saying, I think we must look at Bitcoin. I think we must have a look, and like you just said, other private entities, corporations, and a big fund, a mutual fund, decided to put some of their investment in Bitcoins that give that kind of alternative to gold more credibility. And yeah, you're right. But me personally, up to now, I don't have any Bitcoins. Maybe I will. I'm more in gold. I'm more traditional on that. But that's why I want to finish that book, and after that to maybe invest in just to protect my wealth. I think that would be a good move. I'm not saying right now, I don't want saying to Canadians that are listening that I'm giving some financial advice. I'm not competent for that. I'm just speaking for myself. And I'm looking at what happened around the world right now. All the money, they're in competition, debasement of the paper money. They are creating money out of thin air. The American US dollar cannot stay like the universal money on the globe, money that a lot of people are using right now. The value of the US dollar will go down. That will help gold. That will help Bitcoin also. I think that the same kind of people that are investing in these two assets. I think we are right now in a time that the monetary system will switch, and we don't know what will be after the US dollar, what will be the money that will be used. Will be based on gold or other things, or a basket of paper money. We don't know, but we can see right now with what happened with the Fed, the Bank of Canada, all other central banks. They will in a couple of years we'll have a new kind of monetary system, and between and during that time, I think it would be good for gold and it would be good for Bitcoin. I don't know if they will be official or they will use the gold or Bitcoin as a standard. I don't believe so. But during that uncertainty that we have right now in the financial markets, that's a good time, I think, for these two assets.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, and I think in terms of what comes next, I think there's quite a bit of dislocation before we come to a better solution. I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Um, but I think one of the issues, with gold is that it's still predicated on trusting the institutions that are dealing in it. So, we say we're going to go back to a gold standard, but it still means like you give me a gold certificate, i.e., $100 bill that represents gold in a vault, but I have to trust you, and that's part of why Bitcoin is so interesting, because it removes that level of trust. You can verify for yourself the asset. But one of the last things I wanted to discuss with you, Maxime, was you mentioned we talked at the beginning the fiscal response in Canada and obviously around the world. And to the common person, they hear that the government's has 400 billion in deficit, and they've borrowed this much money, they've printed this much money, and it just doesn't register. It's not a concern to most people. And most likely governments in this day and age, where they have access to the printing press through the central banks, they won't default, right? They'll monetize all of this debt, and we'll see a lot of price increases, and we'll see a lot of inflation to the point where confidence in these monetary instruments dissolves. And when that happens, as that happens, I guess, we get increasing amounts of really bad outcomes, chaos, social problems, growing government. And I don't know if have you read the book, The Sovereign Individual?
No.
I'll send you a link for that
Yeah.
when we're done. I highly recommend that. But another one is the fourth turning, and they both kind of speak to this. We may be, as much as you know that I love the principles that you espouse as part of your leadership at the PPC and what the party stands for. They just don't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be the right time for that message. We seem to be going more towards collectivism, more towards socialism. And as we've been discussing, naturally, that's to be expected as things break down further and further and further. And so I wonder if, as I wonder if for someone like you, and I guess this is my pitch, for someone like you, I think over the next 2 or 3 years, Bitcoin will become a far bigger issue around the world. I think the price will be way higher. I think more people will have an appreciation for its value. And I think it's going to be something that governments have to contend with. That could be the messy period. But 5 to 10 years from now, I think the battle is won, and I think Bitcoin wins. Now, that's me being, my optimistic self about what this represents. But I almost think for someone like yourself who, is putting out these excellent messages, but because of the zeitgeist of the times that we're in, it's not resonating with a lot of people because we're in this collectivist mindset pretty much around the world. I wonder if you leaned into something like Bitcoin earlier and developed a credibility around understanding it and knowing what it is, and not selling it, of course, but kind of introducing it to people for the aspects of liberty that it allows for. And then at such time when the political winds, when the social winds change, and that idea of individualism, of liberty, of freedom is resurrected, hopefully, on the basis of a sounder money system, then I think there'll be a lot of people that resonate with the message that you share. And I think you'd also benefit a lot from credibility earned when nobody was talking about this thing to, in the future, everybody is. So I wonder if you've given thought to that, because I know it must be frustrating for you to feel this trend toward greater socialism, greater collectivism, and have your extremely rational perspective on individual liberty fall on deaf ears a lot of the time.
Yes, you have a point there. But concerning Bitcoin, I'm still, learning. That's why, I'm reading. I will finish to read your book. But I can tell you that I'm more open than I was the first discussion that we had, because I'm more interested to read about it. Than in the past, I didn't know and I didn't want to know. But I think it's important to be educated about that alternative. And yes, you're right. I did a couple of videos 10 years ago saying, we must go back to a gold standard, because we had a gold standard in the 19th century. And that was a prosperous century with the trades and, all more free trade, real free trade. The money was paper money were based on something, and that was the gold standard. So that's why I'm promoting that, because it was a success in the past. But right now, what will be the next one? Maybe we must, and I think you're right, put in the equation Bitcoin. And I'm reading about that, but I want also, and I'm learning about that, so I'm more open. I'm not telling you that I still believe in a strong gold standard. The paper money must be based on something, not and the government, as you know, they can print all the money, and that's what we're doing in Canada right now. But that being said, you're right to say that we are in a time right now that socialism, more government, and crisis are outside, are there, and that will be worse. We are in a recession. We may be in a depression soon. So that being said, for us, speaking about more freedom, less government, more individual freedom, we're not popular. People want to have more safety, and they think that it will come from the government. And so when I'm saying less government and more freedom, it's a little bit harder for us to be out there. But our goal, in politics, and our goal and my goal is to continue to speak about what I believe, because we have the best ideas. We just have to be out there to explain our ideas based on Western civilization, based on people, and not the big fat government. But I'm very realistic at the same time. I think at the next general election, our goal is to increase our support. I don't believe that I'll be prime minister after the next election. My goal is we had 1.6% of the vote nationally. It took 20 years and 6 elections for the Green Party to have that. We did that in 1 year. And I think we must increase our percentage of the vote from 1.6 to 5-6%. That would be a huge achievement if we're doing that. And I want to be part of that mainstream national debate. Right now, we are not. And the way to be part of that mainstream national debate on issues, it's to be in the House and to be back in the House of Commons and to be elected. So I will work very hard to be back in the House and to speak about what we believe. And we don't need to be in government to change things. Look at the Green Party. Every establishment parties and mainstream parties, the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP, the Bloc Québécois, they have a green platform that is, almost like the Green Party of Canada. So they're not in government, but they had only 3 MPs, and they won the debate on the environment. And if we can do the same with 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 MPs and having a big influence in Canada, that would be great. I think that's the goal. Step by step, we can do something. But about the new system, after that collapse financial system that I believe will happen, I don't know when, but will happen. It always happened in the past. If you look at history, maybe Bitcoin can play a role. But I need to know a little bit more about that and to be more informed, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure after this for some reading for your Christmas holidays. I'll send you a few great articles. One of the things that's so great about this space is that the intellectual capital, the quality of the thought and the people and the discourse is so amazing. And I know that once you get drawn into it, I think you'll appreciate it. So I'll send you some of our best stuff and you can enjoy it by the fire over the holidays. But Max, the last thing before I let you go, aside from gold, aside from Bitcoin, for the people that are concerned about what's happening here in Canada and of course other countries, but more relevant to you and I here in Canada, who see, we have the finance minister talking about preloaded stimulus, and this gets a lot of people concerned about what's going to be happening to their savings. And, we have obviously at some point tax via inflation or direct is going to have to go up for all this borrowing and spending. We have concerns about mandated vaccines. We have concerns about freedom of mobility. What do you think? Aside from taking care of yourself financially, is the appropriate response from a concerned individual today? What can they do to push back against what's happening?
But they can do a lot. They can first of all be informed about what happened, and that's the most important. When you know what happened and there's a solution there, but maybe that solution won't be implemented soon. But you have to speak about it. You have to speak about what you believe. You have to have the courage of explaining what you think is happening right now, loss of our freedom, and to your friends, to your family, to your co-workers. Be out there and share our videos. You can go on our website, People's Party of Canada.ca. You can go on my YouTube channel, People's Party of Canada official YouTube channel. They can do, we're not alone. We have the social media right now that we didn't have before. And, we started the People's Party with social media. And we started the organization. When we started the party, we said, go do a Facebook page in your region and ask people to come and have a meeting with them and create a writing association. So we were able to use the social media to create a political party in 1 year. It took about 5 years for the Reform Party of Canada to be an efficient political party. We did that in 1 year with the use of social media. So we have something there, and I'm saying to people, go out there and share links and what you're reading and speak about it. We're not alone. We are maybe a strong minority, but we are still a minority. And I'm looking at some politicians that are very scared for their seats right now. People are not happy. They're not happy. They know that something is not real right now, what happened. And I believe that the common sense of people will, and the good idea and the best ideas based on freedom and personal responsibility will win. But we need everybody to do what they think that is good for themselves, but also to not be scared. Right now, it's the censorship on certain social media. But there's a way to be out there and just to speak about what we believe. I'm asking people, believe in yourself and don't be afraid to expand your ideas. And that's the most important. We are growing as the political party because of the support of people, and we have very active partisans that are helping us to grow. So I don't think that we'll be able to change the way that the liberal government is governing right now, but we can inform, and if I can use that word, educate the population altogether. And I'm optimistic that at the end, always the best ideas will win. And that's why I'm in politics. I'm not doing that to please everybody and to tell you what you want to hear. I think people must hear what happened right now in this country, and that's what I'm doing. Maybe sometimes it's not popular with the majority of the population, but step by step will be there.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, and I do think I have faith at least that the best ideas will win, and that the truth will emerge, and that the truth will prevail. And it's voices like yours and discussions like this and the many others that are happening out there that are trying to cut through the noise of the fear mongering and the very narrow narrative and bias of the mainstream media that people get fed. And I think you're right. I think if people desire to and they seek to be informed, and the sources of information that they consult, or they're able to curate their own sources of information to come to their own conclusions, then I think we'll get people making better decisions, and we'll get people being more calm and methodical and rational with their decision making, and less tolerant of the types of decision making that we're seeing at a state level today. So that's my hope. And what's really great about this form of media and what we both have been doing and many others is that clearly there's an appetite for this. People are tuning into these conversations, and they may not agree with everything you or I say, but they first of all, they see the manner in which we're having the discussion, a very open, a very respectful, educated, informed discussion, and then they can take from it what they will. And I think the more we do this, and if we persist in this, then at least we keep giving ourselves chances, for people to encounter another perspective. And that, I typically think that you can't go wrong there. That's a good thing. So, Max, it's a pleasure to speak to you again. I know it's been a tough year, but hopefully you're able to spend time with family and friends over Christmas in that lovely environment you're in, and do a little Bitcoin reading while you're at it. And we'll speak again sometime in the new year.
I will. I still have 4 chapters to read. So I promise you next time we'll be able to have a deep discussion about all that in this book.
Excellent. I can't wait. Take care of yourself, Max. Thanks again.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. Merry Christmas. Enjoy your time with your family. Thank you. And we'll see you next year.
Bye-bye.
Bye.